Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm doing a solo run-through of Elden Ring, the board game, Weeping Peninsula. This is a cooperative campaign game that can either be played as a complete standalone package or combined with other editions of Elden Ring. And I think that the campaign in this box is considered to be the opening campaign. Now, I went ahead and I got everything set up for a solo game. In order to avoid spoilers, I'm going to partially go through the first two tutorial scenarios. These are really just there to teach you the rules of the game, so I won't be really spoiling anything. But I don't want to go much further than that because then I really will start spoiling things. I'm going to be playing as the astrologer. You have 4 different characters that you can play in this box. Their card shows you your starting equipment, as well as your starting health and focus meter, as well as your hand limit. And you'll just set those to match the numbers there. And then you get your starting combat deck, which is based on your armor and weapons, and your starting attribute deck. We get 1 of each type of potion. We shuffled up all these decks, and there we go, we're ready to begin. We're going to take out the scenario book, and we're going to turn to the first scenario, Stranded Graveyard. And this is a narrative scenario. Elden Ring has 5 different types of scenarios that you're going to encounter. You'll have narrative scenarios, exploration scenarios, gauntlet scenarios where you fight waves of enemies, dungeon scenarios where you explore a dungeon and kill enemies, and then boss scenarios. In the narrative scenarios, you're going to read a bunch of text and then make sort of choose your own adventure style choices. At first, all is darkness. Not night, but an abyss made by the total absence of illumination. Trepidation, fear even, might stain your senses, were it not that within this void such concepts were unknown. Then, at once, the darkness is banished, as golden light reaches toward you through the inky blackness, resting your attention. You rise. Arise to answer the enigmatic summon. Special rules. Path of Righteousness. At the start of this scenario, place 3 objective tokens to the side of the playing area. If 1 or more of these tokens remain at the end of the scenario, retrieve card 79 from the vault and shuffle it into the hardship deck. Sound is the first to return. A gentle echo, the sound of air moving sluggishly through an enclosed space. Strangely lonely and foreboding. The same air, cold and indifferent, tickles where your skin is bared, brushing over your fingertips and across your face. For a moment, you are content to listen and feel. Listen to the world around you without movement or intention. Feel weight and presence return to your body once more. Then you remember the call. You open your eyes. For a moment, you are blinded, even in the low light, and force them close once more. Bright stars seared across your vision. Only when they abate do you cautiously try again. You're lying on the ground in the middle of a wide and high-ceilinged cavern, on a bed made of unforgiving stone and dry, cracked dirt. Stone walls surround you in all but one direction, bare but for the occasional muddy smear and errant root. Opposite, you spy a tall stone archway at the end of a series of steps, the pale gray coloring at odds with the earthy tone painted across the rest of the cavern. The scene is bathed in bright gold by a curious tree, emanating light into your surroundings. The sight fascinates you, pulling you unconsciously to your feet, its magnetic pull drawing you closer. It's only as you feel the ground below starting to shift that you realize you're standing at the edge of a large hole in the ground, another cavern below into which you now risk falling. If you're content to slide into the cavern below, read Narrative Story 3. If you'd prefer to try to climb back up, read Narrative Entry 7. So at this point, you would make a choice, and then you would read further, and you would have additional choices to make. This opening narrative is fairly linear, but you will get somewhat different passages to read. In the end, you're going to wind up in the same place. And I don't want to spoil that for you, so I'm not going to continue on. I'll leave that for you to read through and to make your own decisions. The choices don't really matter that much. So we're going to move on to scenario 2, which is an exploration scenario. First steps. Wind chases through the grass, a faint chorus saluting your arrival in the lands between. Tarnished, it's time to begin your journey. So right here, it gives you all the rules for setting up this particular scenario and how to advance. We take very specific tiles and we craft the tile deck. And then you just place one of the starting tiles out on the board. We're told to take out these 3 Guidance of Grace cards, the Resource Hunt, Honoring the Goddess, and Bloodied Steel. Completing these 3 goals is how we are going to complete this scenario. For the Resource Hunt, we need to collect 5 materials. For Bloodied Steel, we need to face 3 hardship cards. And for Honoring the Goddess, we need to interact with 2 Stake of America tokens. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I'm actually not that familiar with Elden Ring, so I don't know the correct pronunciation of anything. Once we complete these 3 goals, we'll then have a combat encounter. And the last thing we need to know is there's a special rules here: quiet surroundings. During the scenario, ignore text on eventful day and eventful night cards. Also during this scenario, Tarnished cannot progress or complete their class quests. Each class has a quest that we begin with, which is right here. As you complete these, you kind of level up, but for these opening tutorial scenarios, we're not really able to progress on these quests. So we're just going to ignore that for now. So I'm just going to place my figure there on the starting tile. The starting tile starts with a Site of Grace token. Usually those would be placed exhausted, but on the starting tile, it's always placed face up. We can interact with that Site of Grace in order to rest, which will let us refill all of our dials to their maximum value. There we go. Now we're ready to begin the exploration scenario. On your turn, you can take up to 3 actions. And those actions can be any combination of explore, move, interact, trade, craft, or use one of your flasks. It's hard to tell, but we actually have 2 different types of flasks here. The top one is the Flask of Crimson Tears, which will refill your health to max. And the bottom one is the Flask of Cerulean Tears, which will refill your FP to max, which stands for focus points, I believe. I'll probably keep calling it magic and just annoy everybody. So obviously the first of my 3 actions is going to be to explore. Exploring is super easy. You just take the top tile of the shuffled deck, and you can place it anywhere, but we have these barriers, which are shown here in the art as sort of these dark spaces. This tile actually has barriers going all the way around. So I couldn't put it here, right, because of the barrier. But I could put it like, let's put it right up there. Have to be able to have a clear path to the tile that we're currently on. And then on that tile, there are 2 things that we can interact with. So we're going to take the tokens and put them on there. I'll explain what each of those are as we go along. And while we're here, let's just explore again for my second action. This tile is open all around it, so that's a good one to launch more exploration from. So why don't we just go ahead and move over there? That'll be our third action. Movement is obviously to an adjacent tile, and you can't go through these barriers. Now, this token here, and also that one there, that is a hardship token. And as soon as you move into a tile with a hardship token, you want to flip it over, and then you have to draw a hardship card. The hardship card has a day half and a night half. So we need to consult our token here. We started in the day. That's what this token is. So we're going to read that section. It says Rainstorm. Until the start of this Tarnish's next turn, Tarnished can only perform 2 actions per turn. This Tarnished passes this hardship at the start of their next turn. Okay, that wasn't so bad because this is actually the end of our turn anyway. If we were playing with more players, then they would be forced to only have 2 actions instead of 3. But that made no difference to us. At the end of our 3 actions, we're now going to draw a weather card. And we have our sort of day deck and our night deck. Right now we're in the day, so we'll draw that top card. And it just says time passes. And I forgot something. Here, our bloodied steel, every time we have a hardship encounter, we're just going to put an objective marker on there. Once we have 3 objective markers on the card, we'll have succeeded at the goal. And that's it. That's the end of the turn. We come right back and we get 3 more actions. For my first action, I'm just going to interact with this token here. That is a Flora material token, so we simply just flip it. We take the top Flora card. We just add it to our inventory. Maybe I'll put it down here. Later, we'll be able to use these things to craft, different items, but for now, we just care about our resource hunt. That is one of the materials that we need of the 5 in order to complete that quest. Now for action 2, let's just explore. That's more flora. And that is a Spirit Spring token. If we interact with that token, we can then sort of teleport to any tile on the map. Let's just go ahead and do our second explore here as our third action. It's another hardship, and that is the Stake of America. That is one of the 2 that we need for the Honoring the Goddesses. But there we go. That was my 3 actions. So we're going to draw the weather card. It says time passes. I think while we're here, I don't see any reason to not just explore. Let's just keep exploring. Another hardship. And that is a ruins token. We can also get materials there. There's 4 different types of material locations. That was number 1. Let's just keep exploring. All right, perfect. There's the other stake. And third action. That is the corpse type of material. That was our 3 actions. And here we go. Sunset, flip the time token. So we're going to flip this. And now we will be drawing from the night deck. And also our hardships will be of the night variety. We can now sort of go around and collect some of this stuff. So let's do our first action as a move. We entered in with a hardship. Eerie Howl. We're at night, so we're going to look at the bottom one. We have the number 3 there. So this is a check. In order to pass this check, we have to get at least 3 points. And you can see there for each one of that symbol, which is the common icon, we're going to get 1 point. So we basically need to get 3 of those icons. And the way we get those icons is by looking at our attribute cards. In the case of this check, we get to draw 2 attribute cards and just look at our symbols. So the first one is a head symbol, but we can use any of these other symbols to be a common symbol. So really, that's worth 1 point. What we're looking for in this next card is a card that has 2 symbols on it. And no, we just got the 1 common. So we failed the check. We got 2 points and we needed to get 3 points. So because we failed, we're going to have to resolve the bottom of the card, which says this tarnished skips any remaining actions this turn. So that's it. That's the end of our turn. And we have to go straight to the weather card. And it's going to be a night one. Okay, and there we go. It's right back to sunrise. While we're here, let's just finish our exploration. Okay, that's another teleportation spot. And I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but it really doesn't matter where you are on these tiles. The artwork is just there for show. All that matters is which tile you're on. I think for my second action, I'll just collect this material. Okay, human bone shard. Excellent. And I keep forgetting to add the objective marker, so that's going to be a second one of those, and we just did another hardship. So I've got one action left. We'll just move over here, and we're going to face this hardship. A foe appears. And we're in the day, so we're looking at that top area. We need to get 4 points on this check. That common only gives us 1 point, so we're going to need to get a head if we want to succeed. Oh, and look at that. We got the head for 3 and the common for 1. That's 5 points. We actually succeeded in this check. And we don't get anything from that except that we managed to dodge the fail condition, which would have damaged us by 1. But that means we get a third objective on this, and that means that we have completed the bloodied steel. So we can just flip that over. And now for my last action, we will interact with this stake of Marika or Marika. We actually remove the token. And then we grab one of these cards. And that's going to let us put an objective marker on this. Okay, the day card is just time passes. 1 is a hardship. Patrol, we're going to need 5. Okay, that's just 1 and then nothing. So we definitely fail that one. And we're going to suffer 2 damage for that. That patrol really messed us up. For my second action, I'll collect this ruin material. It's a little cave moss. 3 will move over. Another hardship. A foe appears. Ah, that's nothing. That's just 2 points. So once again, we get hit for 1. So we're down to 2 health. We did, though, get a third material. Okay, and now we got an eventful day. Draw a card from the event deck. So normally when we get this, we would draw one of those event cards there. But the special rule for this tutorial is that we ignore that. Just know that in some of the later exploration scenarios, you'd be drawing events. Okay, we're now going to make quick work of the rest of this. We got our second one here, so we have honored the goddess. And there's our 4th material, so we just need 1 more material. But those were all 3 of our actions. Time passes. So for 1 action, we're going to activate the Spirit Spring. We'll just warp over to here, and then we'll interact with the flora. And we got our 5th resource, and we have completed all 3 of our quests. So as it says here in the scenario book, it says that in order to complete this scenario, the players must complete the resource hunt, honoring the goddess, and bloodied steel quests. Then each player turns to page 4 of an encounter book and attempts the encounter there individually. So because this game can be played with up to 4 players, there are 4 encounter books. They are mostly the same, but there are a few differences. So we're going to flip here to first steps, and it's going to show us over here how we set up this combat encounter. That'll just take 1 second. And there we go. We're all set up for the combat encounter. As it shows over here, we have a misbegotten and a rotten stray. And there's several different versions of both of those. So you take one of those at random and you get their card. And then you get your own player cards here. They say marching order on the back. And these are the initiative cards. Now, if you're playing with multiple people, you would only get one initiative card. But if you're playing solo, you get 2 initiative cards and you shuffle them in with the enemy cards. And this is going to set the initiative for this first round of combat. Now, I get to place my figure wherever I want in this area. I think I'm going to leave them there. Let's now see what the initiative order is. Okay, that's going to work out great. We get to go first, then the rotten stray, then we get to go again, and then the misbegotten. But as you can see, I'm here in this second row. There's 3 different rows, and these rows are less about sort of physical space and more about your character's positioning and stance. And because of that, each different row gives you a different special ability. If you're in the back, you get more defense. You get to draw 2 attribute cards when you're trying to defend yourself, and then you pick one. In the front row, you get the same thing, but with offense. You get a critical hit, which means you get to draw 2 attribute cards rather than 1, and pick the better one. Here in the middle row, you get to reposition in the initiative order. So I can actually move this 1 forward. And that's because I was in this second row. I started in that second row. So this is great. We're actually going to get to take 2 turns before our enemies get to take their turn. And similarly to when we were exploring, we can take 3 actions on our turn. And those actions can be moving, drawing cards, playing cards, discarding a card, using a consumable, using one of our flasks, or doing a summons. I think for one of my first actions, I will use my flask in order to get my health back. And you just get to refill back to your max, which in our case is 5. And what I should have done is drawn combat cards at the beginning here. We can see our hand size is 4, so we get to draw 4 combat cards. Should have done that right off the bat. So for an action, I could play one of these. Instead, I'll take 1 action to move. You have to move in an orthogonal direction. You can't move diagonal. I'm going to move up into that critical hit range. And then for my last action, I'm going to play one of my combat cards. I'm going to play this Glintstone Arc. Now on the card here, it shows that it's going to cost 2 focus in order to play this card. The blue indicates like the type of focus it is. That's not really important here. It then shows like the range of the attack. In this case, the 3 boxes there that are sort of red, that indicates that I'm going to be hitting the first foe in my current column and both columns on either side. So in this case, I'm going to be hitting both of them. Now, because we're in the critical hit range, we're going to get to draw 2 of these and pick the better one. So that's just 1 symbol. And we can see here at the bottom that I'm basically going to do a hit for every common symbol that I draw. And in this case, we can make anything a common symbol. So that would just be 1 hit. But let's see what the other one is. Ah, there we go. That's 2. So we'll take that one. We'll be doing 2 damage to both of these foes. And now we can look at their cards here. On their cards, it shows their hit points in the upper right. If they had any sort of defense, then we would reduce that from our hit, but they don't have defense, so they're each going to take 2 damage. And I'm just using these scroll wheels here for convenience. Okay, so we've played that card, but as you can see there, it has a little chain symbol. And that means that we can, without spending another action, play a card that has that chain symbol, which we have. We have this one right here, which also has that chain symbol. So we can chain these 2 attacks together. It's going to cost 1 FP. And this looks like it has the same attack range, but those boxes, rather than being sort of red, are subtly blue. The color is actually kind of difficult to distinguish. But what that means is that I actually have to pick one enemy. Rather than hitting all of them, I'm just picking one of them in that range. I'm going to go for the Misbegotten because they're a little bit more dangerous. It'd be good to get them off the field. So my attribute deck is empty, so I got to shuffle the discard pile. Once again, we're in the critical hit range, so we'll get to draw 2 of these. Ooh, that's a great one. That head symbol would be worth 1 hit, and the common symbol would be worth 1 hit, so that'd be 2 hits, plus this little special, which would let us restore 1 of our FP. I don't think we're going to be able to beat that. Nope, absolutely not. So, there we go. 2 hits on the Misbegotten. They go down to 1 health. And we get to restore 1 FP. Now, for some reason, we were able to have like 2 head icons. We would get to do that twice. You can do these any number of times. But there we go. We play that card. And that was our 3rd action. So we would be done here. And now we would go to the next one. And that's going to be us again. Now, there's a bunch of different cards that we can have in our combat deck. What I just used were 2 attack cards. Here we have 2 defense cards. And these you'd be able to use when you were being attacked in order to defend yourself. But instead, we can use these for something else. So for my first action, I'm going to move. I'm just going to slide over like that. And then for my second action, I'm actually going to discard this card rather than playing it. Now, when you discard a card like that, you can use it for 2 different things. You can either restore 1 of your FP, or you can perform a light attack. When you perform a light attack, you just draw your top attribute card. And for every symbol that's on there, whatever the symbol is, you're going to do 1 hit to the first enemy in your lane. So in this case, I'm doing 1 damage to the Misbegotten. And that's going to kill them. So we just remove them from the queue. And then I think for my 3rd action, I'm going to draw cards. And when you draw cards, you get to draw up to your hand limit. So we'll get 4 cards. Well, we'll draw 3 cards so that we have 4. There we go. Now I have some defense if I need it. I got some more attack cards. And we're good to go. And now the Rotten Stray gets to go. So they have a 2-staged attack. We're just going to read things from left to right, top to bottom. So the first one is they have a attack that's just going to attack their lane. They would do 2 damage, but I'm not in their lane. And then they're going to move 1 towards me. And then they're going to attack their lane again and do 2 more damage. But again, I knew that this was coming, so I smartly got out of the way and made sure I would be free of these attacks. So now that's the end of the first combat round. We're now going to shuffle up the marching order again and get a new initiative order. Okay, and we got to go first. Okay. Now, just for fun, because we're going to dominate this thing, let's say that it had gone first. We would just do the same thing we just did. It would attack its lane. We're not there. It would move 1 toward us. And now it's going to attack its row or its column, and we are there. And so it would do 2 damage to us. But we have some defensive cards that we could play. So the first thing that we could do is we could discard combat cards in order to get the defense that's shown at the top. So we could even discard these attack cards if we want to get 1 defense. So I could actually block this attack by just discarding these 2 cards. So maybe I'll discard Fend Off for 1 defense, and then I'll play Focus Defense. So we just draw an attribute card. Okay, I got the head icon. So that's 1 defense, and I could even spend some focus to do additional defense. But we don't need that. The 1 defense will be fine, so we defended ourselves from that attack. And then that would be their turn. And on our turn, we can play our attack. We're in the critical range. Boom, 2 damage. And they're dead. Now, obviously, that was a very simplistic combat. Combats later in the game get much more intense with more enemies. And as you go along, your combat deck and your weapons upgrade and you get new abilities. But this at least gives you an idea of how the combat works. And I actually want to stop right here because if I do any more, I'll start to get into spoiler territory. The next scenario is the Bridge of Sacrifice, and it is a narrative adventure. I definitely don't want to go through that because that would just spoil the entire thing. There are 14 scenarios in total, I believe, and there's a lot of surprises awaiting that you haven't seen here. Hopefully this gives you a starting idea of how the game works. Well, that's all for me. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.